Yo, what's up? Dr. Swole here, MD, pro physique athlete. Today I'm going to be showing you how to choose a workout program, and this is specifically tailored for hypertrophy. Choosing the right workout program will make a big difference in terms of your gains. If you choose one that's ineffective, it doesn't matter how hard you work for how long. There will be a limit to how much muscle you'll be able to put on. Today I'll be giving you 10 criteria to look at workout programs with a critical eye so you can choose one that's going to be effective for you. I see a lot of workout programs that people follow in the gym or that I see online that make a lot of common mistakes that these tips will address. First tip for choosing a workout program is to find a program that fits into your schedule sustainably. And the sustainability part here is key. I would much rather you follow a 4-day workout program that you're always able to hit week after week than a 5 or 6 day program where you end up missing a lot of days or getting burned out and falling off track. Ultimately, consistency and sustainability are king, and you really need to have a program that you're going to be able to follow over the long term. So try and think of how many days that you'll have available in the week in a worst case scenario, and make sure your program fits into that. If you have a very irregular schedule, try and choose a split that is going to be flexible with that. For example, full body and upper lower splits tend to be quite flexible, especially if you have some ability with autoregulation. Second thing to look for in a hypertrophy program is to choose one with exercises that have a high overload potential. This is something that I don't hear a lot of people talking about, but it's really important to think about. Progressive overload is going to be the main driver of hypertrophy, and you want to choose a workout program that is filled with exercises that will allow for progressive overload over a long period of time. It is true that people are able to get big using a vast variety of movements depending on the individual. But there's almost always some component of progressive overload here. And not all exercises are going to be well disposed towards this. I'll bring up calisthenics as an example here. If you're using push-ups as your main chest exercise, you will get a lot of stimulus for your pecs initially, and you will build muscle with these. And you'll be able to progress for a while just by adding reps. But eventually this isn't going to be enough, and you really need to add resistance to make it harder. You can, for example, add a weighted body vest, but there's a limited potential for how much weight you're able to add here. I call this your overload ceiling. You want to choose exercises that have a really high overload ceiling so you can continue to build up as you get stronger. So while push-ups may not be ideal in the long term for maximum hypertrophy, that's not to say that all calisthenics are not ideal. For example, with chin-ups, if you use a dips belt, you're actually able to hang plates and end up adding a lot of weight over time. So weighted chin-ups actually have a really high overload ceiling. Another example, if you're doing a reversed single arm triceps extension on a cable stack, this exercise will ultimately have a limited overload potential. That is, you're not ultimately going to be able to go really heavy on this just because you're going to be limited by the stability of your joints. On the other hand, a cable press down with a bar attachment actually does give you a high overload ceiling because you're able to really lock into the movement and push. Third tip for choosing a solid hypertrophy program is to choose a program focused on main compound movement patterns. Your program should be built around the 6 main movement patterns in bodybuilding. Squat type movements, which would include squat variations, leg press and lunges, hip hinges, for example, deadlift variations, Romanian deadlifts and good mornings, horizontal presses, so bench pressing type variations, overhead press type movements like with dumbbells or barbells, horizontal pulling movements, so row variations, and vertical pulling movements like lat pull downs and chin-ups. Focusing on these main movement patterns will make sure that you hit all of your main muscle groups. This will prevent imbalances in your physique. Also, main compound heavy movements tend to have a high overload ceiling, which ties into our last point. So it gives you a sort of insurance in knowing that you're choosing at least pretty good exercises. Okay, next criteria for choosing a good hypertrophy program is to choose a program that contains a mix of rep ranges. According to the current scientific literature, you can grow muscle from a variety of rep ranges, anywhere from 1 to 30-ish reps, provided you're going close enough to failure. I do recommend focusing on moderate rep ranges. This is a nuanced topic, but it basically comes down to a trade-off between stimulus and fatigue, as well as your ability to accumulate metabolites. Very low rep ranges, like 1 to 5, where you're really lifting heavy, will be nice because they can help you build strength. But they also tend to be very fatiguing per unit volume that you lift. Higher rep ranges like 12 to 20 and 20 to 30 are relatively less fatiguing and put less stress on your connective tissues. But they can be very mentally difficult because they're very painful from the metabolic burn. Having some of these metabolites around though can be helpful because metabolic stress is a pathway of hypertrophy. So I recommend having about 2/3 of your volume coming in the 6 to 12 rep range and about 1/3 of your volume outside of the 6 to 12 rep range. And this could be in the lower rep ranges like 1 to 5 or higher rep ranges like 12 to 20 or 20 to 30. Now this will vary a lot depending on the person as well as the specific exercise. So note that rep ranges is something that you're gonna have to play around for yourself. This is just a very basic starting point, but you can look at a program and get a sense of where it lies. Next criteria for choosing a good hypertrophy program is to choose a program that has enough volume to allow you to progress. You can approximate training volume as the number of sets you perform for each muscle group across the week. And for each person, depending on their level of experience, there will be an optimal amount of volume that will allow you to progress the fastest. If you're an absolute beginner, this optimal volume is going to be very low. So if you're just starting out, I'd recommend starting small. Something like 6 to 10 sets per muscle group will allow you to progress well. As you become more advanced, you're probably going to need more volume in order to continue progressing at an optimal rate. And typically intermediates will require more volume than they did as a beginner to progress. So if you've been running a beginner program for a while and you're stalling, think about increasing volume provided that you're recovering well. Now beyond the intermediate level, it's not so clear. I found for myself that as I went into more advanced territory, I actually required less volume. And this is because I developed better mind-muscle connection and better technique, so I was able to get more stimulus out of every set. Other people may require the same volume or perhaps even a bit more at an advanced level. Next point to look for when choosing a muscle building program is to choose a program that has good fatigue distribution. Fatigue distribution is how you spread out your training stress across the week, and ideally you want it spread out as evenly as possible. When choosing a split, find one that distributes your rest days as evenly as possible throughout the week, and also look at how the training is distributed for each muscle group. For example, you don't want all of your back work to get bunched up on Wednesday and Friday. Even though you might be training your back twice a week in that scenario, you could probably get more out of it by spreading it out more in the week. Also look at the difficulty of each workout, and you want each workout to have a fairly similar amount of overall fatigue. For example, you'll see that in a lot of my programs, I usually try and avoid putting legs and back on the same day. That is, unless it's something like a full body split. This is because leg training and back training is going to be the most fatiguing part of your program. And if you put these together, you're going to have a really tough day. You're going to have way easier days later in the week when you're training your chest and your arms. You'll also see that I try to spread out my heavy work throughout the week. If you put your heavy squat, bench, deadlift, and row all on one day, and then all of your lighter work on the other days, your heavy work is going to produce disproportionately more fatigue, so you won't have optimal fatigue distribution. Fatigue distribution isn't as much of an issue for beginners just because you're not able to tire yourself out that much since you're lifting with lighter weights. But at an advanced level, it will make a difference. Next thing to look for in a good muscle growth program is to choose a program that is minimalistic and efficient. In general, you want to choose a program that gives you an optimal stimulus for all muscle groups, but you want to do so in an efficient fashion. This is going to be important from a recovery standpoint, but also from a life sustainability standpoint. As a general rule, if you're able to train with fewer days in the gym, I'd recommend that. As a beginner, you probably only need to be in the gym about 3 or 4 days per week. And even advanced athletes, as naturals, usually only need about 4 or 5 days per week to optimize hypertrophy. Sometimes 6, but not for everyone. So don't think that just because your favorite bodybuilder on Instagram smashes twice a day, 6 days per week, that you really need to do that as well. A lot of pro bodybuilders are on performance enhancing supplements, and this allows them to recover from more. Choosing a program that is as efficient as possible will make sure that you're more sustainable with fitness in your life. Remember, sustainability and consistency wins in the end, and a lot of people use a lack of time as an excuse. So choose a program that is streamlined so that you know you can keep it in your life consistently. Next criteria for a good hypertrophy program is to choose a program that includes exercises that work for you. Exercise selection is very individual. Don't say that you absolutely have to, for example, squat, bench, and deadlift for hypertrophy. A key point here is that everyone has different geometry where it comes to their body shape. Depending on your skeletal structure and your limb length, certain exercises may be biomechanically favorable for you. So for example, a certain incline on a bench or a certain grip width may just not do it for you. And if you're not feeling your target muscle in an exercise, there may be some underlying reason even if you have good technique. A couple of tips for choosing good exercises is to choose an exercise where during the movement you actually feel the burn near the end of your set. You can get a pump in the target muscle from that exercise, and that exercise will make you sore the next day if you train it hard. And in terms of technique, find an exercise that grooves well for you. That is, you can really lock in and push hard on that exercise, and the technique comes fairly easy to you. So don't feel bad for making exercise substitutions, just make sure you're swapping exercise in the same exercise family. For example, you could swap a squat for a front squat, but I wouldn't switch a squat for a leg extension. Next tip for choosing a good workout program is to choose one that allows you to recover. As you know, I was using a high frequency full body training split the last year, but high frequency full body doesn't work for everyone if they end up having a lot of overlapping soreness and they're not able to auto-regulate. If you find that you're getting really sore from a workout and you're still sore training that same muscle group the next workout, this could become a problem if it becomes a consistent thing. I usually recommend that people aim to be sore the next day after their workout and that the soreness should resolve before they train the same muscle group again. If you find you're consistently having overlapping soreness, you may need to decrease the volume, frequency, or intensity of your training. For this reason, a beginner often will struggle with a high frequency program. This is usually because they're not able to auto-regulate well, especially if you like to take things to failure. If you don't have the experience to change your workouts on the fly as needed, you will run into recovery issues. How do you know a program is too much for you? If you've been training with a program consistently and you find that you're always tired, you're not motivated to go to the gym, you're not progressing well, you're getting a lot of aches and pains, you may want to try decreasing the volume, intensity, or frequency. Recovery also includes longer time frames, so taking deload weeks. A deload week is a week where you reduce your training volume and intensity, usually by about a half or even more. If you're following a challenging training program, you probably will need to deload. The frequency of deloads depends on your level, anywhere from every 4 weeks on the more extreme end for more advanced athletes, which is what I do, or even every 2 or 3 months if you're a beginner. Okay, 10th feature of a good hypertrophy program is one that includes some form of auto-regulation. Auto-regulation means that you're changing the workouts depending on how you're feeling that day. Training to an RPE or RIR is a good example of this. RPE stands for rate of perceived exertion and it's a scale of 10, and RIR is repetitions in reserve or how many reps you have left in the tank. If I tell you to train to a 1 or 2 RIR, for example, that means that you know you're going to within a certain proximity to failure. And this will make sure that you get a good workout even if you're having a really tough day. It will also make sure that you don't overdo things. This is why you'll see that I really like strength programs that include some type of AMRAP set, which means as many reps as possible. So instead of mindlessly executing just a certain weight with a certain number of reps, you're actually titrating your stimulus depending on the day. This is why you'll see all of my programs include rep ranges and not specific rep counts. I'll give you, say, a rep range of 6 to 10 reps, so you can perform a couple more reps if you're feeling strong that day. And I recommend training to about 1 to 2 reps in reserve for the most part. What tips do you have for choosing a good workout program? Let us know in the comments below. If you want to learn about a method for combining some strength and hypertrophy work in an auto-regulated fashion, check out this video where I explain the top set back off method. This is one of my favorite techniques for hypertrophy training that includes a strength component. You basically work up to a top heavy set followed with some back off work. Make sure you subscribe for more videos like this and we'll see you next time.